Most people want success. They dream about it, talk about it, even plan for it, but only a small percentage ever actually get there. Why? Because 99% of people are doing the same thing, playing it safe. Most people settle for comfort because it feels safe. It's familiar, predictable, and doesn't threaten the ego. From a young age, we're taught to avoid pain, avoid mistakes, and seek stability. So we grow up thinking that a steady job, a decent salary, and a predictable routine is the end goal. It's what everyone else is doing, and it's reinforced by society, family, and even friends. We build our lives around what feels secure rather than what fuels our passion or pushes our limits. We chase what looks good on the outside, not what challenges us to grow on the inside. Comfort creates the illusion of success. It tells you you're fine, you're doing okay, you've made it far enough. And so you stop pushing. You stop asking more of yourself. You ignore that voice inside that knows you were meant for more. You trade your dreams for a routine. You silence your ambition to avoid the stress that comes with chasing something greater. But here's the truth. Nothing great ever came from staying comfortable. Comfort zones are where potential goes to die. They are padded walls with invisible locks. You feel free, but you're trapped by your own habits, fears, and excuses. The problem is, most people won't admit they've settled. They convince themselves they're being practical or realistic. They say this is just how life is, or I'm too old to start over, or it's too risky. But deep down there's a quiet dissatisfaction they can't ignore. It shows up as boredom, lack of energy, low motivation, or a constant feeling of being stuck. And instead of facing it, they cover it up with distractions. Scrolling through social media, binge-watching shows, partying, shopping, or overworking. They do anything to avoid the discomfort of change. Settling becomes a habit. You start compromising on your goals. You lower your standard. You accept relationships, careers, and environments that don't excite or inspire you. You choose instant gratification over long-term fulfillment. And every time you do that, you shrink a little. Your belief in yourself weakens. Your vision gets blurry. You tell yourself you're not capable of more. And then you act like that's the truth. But what's really happening is fear. Fear of failure. Fear of judgment. Fear of starting over. Fear of discomfort. Fear of standing out. And comfort becomes the mask people wear to hide those fears. It becomes the excuse for inaction. But here's what people don't realize. The comfort zone is temporary. Life will eventually force you out of it, whether it's a job loss, health scare, failed relationship, or just the unbearable weight of regret. The longer you wait, the harder the wake-up call. People settle for comfort because pushing beyond it takes effort. It requires discipline, courage, and the willingness to fail. It means risking your pride, facing your insecurities, and challenging everything you've been told about what's possible. It means putting yourself in situations where you don't feel ready, and doing it anyway. And that's not something most people are willing to do. They want the reward without the struggle. They want growth without the pain. They want confidence without taking risks. But it doesn't work that way. The truth is, the life you want is always outside of your comfort zone. The person you're capable of becoming is waiting beyond what's easy. You're not meant to coast through life just surviving. You're meant to test your limits, break through barriers, and live with purpose. But you'll never experience that if you choose comfort every time. The 99% do. That's why they never rise. They stay comfortable. And in doing so, they stay average. Even when greatness was within reach, 99% of people follow. Because it's easier. It's easier to be told what to do than to figure it out yourself. It's easier to wait for instructions, approval, or permission, than to take the risk of going first. Following gives the illusion of progress without the weight of responsibility. You don't have to take the blame if things go wrong. You don't have to face criticism. And you certainly don't have to deal with the pressure of making tough decisions. That's why the majority follow, not because they lack intelligence or ability, but because they're afraid of what it takes to lead. The 99% live by trends. They wear what others wear, think how others think, and do what's popular, not what's purposeful. They measure their worth based on likes, comments, attention, and external validation. They consume more than they create. They wait for others to go first, to give the green light, to confirm that it's safe to move. But the truth is, nothing great ever came from waiting. The leaders, the 1%, are the ones who step forward when there is no clear path. They're the ones who take action without a blueprint, speak when it's unpopular, and stand firm when others doubt them. Leading isn't about a title, a position, or authority. It's about mindset. It's about taking ownership of your life, instead of letting others dictate it. The 1% don't wait for the perfect conditions. They create momentum with what they have. They understand that leadership starts with self. Before you can lead others, you must lead yourself. That means choosing discipline over ease, growth over comfort, truth over convenience. It means making the hard decisions, showing up consistently, and doing the right thing even when no one's watching. The 99%, they want to blend in, not because they don't have dreams, but because they don't want to risk embarrassment, judgment, or failure. They hold back their ideas because they worry what others will think. They silence their potential to keep the peace, to avoid conflict, to fit in. But the 1% embrace being different. They understand that leadership requires being misunderstood sometimes, even criticized. They aren't trying to please everyone. They're focused on purpose, impact, and legacy. The majority live reactively. They respond to life as it comes. If something goes wrong, they blame the system, the government, the economy, their parents, their past. They hand over their power by making excuses and waiting for someone else to fix their problems. But the 1% take responsibility. They don't wait for the world to change. They change themselves. They realize that every day is an opportunity to lead by example, to take charge of their mindset, their choices, and their future. Leadership is lonely. That's another reason most people avoid it. When you lead, you often walk alone at first. People will question you, doubt you, mock you. You'll face moments of uncertainty, fear, and pressure. You'll have to make decisions without knowing the outcome. And you'll fail many times. But the difference is, the 1% don't let failure define them. They let it refine them. They see leadership not as a reward but as a responsibility. It's not about being above others, but about lifting others up by going first, by being bold, by showing what's possible. Most people don't lead because they've been conditioned to believe that leadership is reserved for the chosen few, the loud, the talented, the lucky. But that's a lie. Leadership is a choice to stop waiting, stop following, and start stepping into your power. Every time you take action aligned with your purpose, even when it's uncomfortable, you lead. Every time you challenge the status quo, think for yourself, and trust your vision, you lead. The world doesn't need more followers. It needs more people willing to rise, to lead, and to show others that it's possible. That's what separates the 1% from the rest. Most people wait for motivation to take action. They think they need to feel inspired before they can get to work, start that project, go to the gym, or chase their goals. But motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. It's driven by mood, by circumstances, by how you feel in the moment. And the truth is, if you rely on motivation, you will only act when it's convenient or exciting, which means you'll rarely follow through when it actually matters. That's why the people who succeed, the ones who achieve the extraordinary, don't depend on motivation. They depend on discipline. Discipline is what keeps you going when motivation disappears. It's the muscle you build every time you show up, even when you don't feel like it. It's the voice inside that says, I don't want to do this right now, but I'm doing it anyway. Motivation is a spark. Discipline is the engine. One fades quickly. The other keeps running no matter what. And this is where most people get stuck. They're waiting to feel ready, to feel hyped, to feel that rush of inspiration. But feelings are fleeting. Discipline isn't about feelings, it's about commitment. The 99% talk about what they want. They dream, they plan, they get excited about ideas, but they rarely execute. They start strong and stop as soon as it gets boring, uncomfortable, or hard. They hit the snooze button. They break their diets. They abandon routine. They chase short-term pleasure over long-term reward. But the 1%, the ones who rise, they show up regardless of emotion. They've trained themselves to follow through no matter how they feel, because they understand that discipline is freedom. It gives you control over your life, your habits, and your results. There will be days when you don't want to work, when you're tired, overwhelmed, discouraged, when no one is watching, and there's no applause, no reward. Those are the days that test you. That's when discipline matters most. Anyone can work when they're motivated. Anyone can show up when things are going well, but few have the strength to persist when the feeling is gone. That's what separates the average from the elite. The disciplined keep their promises to themselves. They don't let circumstances decide their consistency. They do the work whether it's easy or not. Discipline is built in the small moments. The decision to get up when you want to stay in bed, to choose water over soda, to focus instead of scroll. It's not about huge sacrifices or intense bursts of effort. It's about doing the small things every single day. And that repetition, that consistency, builds momentum. It builds confidence. Every time you keep going when it would be easier to quit, you strengthen your identity. You become the kind of person who doesn't give in, who doesn't back down, who doesn't negotiate with laziness. Motivation may get you started, but it won't get you to the finish line. That's where most people fall short. They mistake excitement for commitment. They think a burst of energy is enough to carry them through, but anything worth achieving requires discipline. It requires doing what needs to be done, especially when it's the last thing you want to do. Discipline isn't glamorous. It's not loud or flashy. It's quiet, consistent, and relentless. And it's what builds real results. The disciplined person isn't necessarily the smartest, the fastest, or the most gifted, but they are the most reliable. They're the ones who train when no one's watching, who practice in silence, who grind in the shadows. While others talk, they act. While others delay, they decide. And over time, those daily choices compound. What begins as a few minutes a day turns into mastery. What starts as a habit becomes a lifestyle. Discipline creates champions, leaders, innovators, the people who build something real, while the rest are still waiting to feel motivated. Everyone wants the reward, the recognition, the results, but very few are willing to give up what it actually takes to get there. Sacrifice is uncomfortable. It means letting go of things that feel good in the short term, so you can build something meaningful in the long term. It means making choices that others don't understand. It means saying no when it would be easier to say yes. And it means doing what's necessary, even when it's not popular, convenient, or enjoyable. The average person avoids sacrifice because they associate it with loss. They think it means giving up happiness, or pleasure, or freedom, but that's a surface-level view. True sacrifice isn't about losing. It's about trading. You're trading temporary ease for lasting growth. You're trading distraction for discipline, entertainment for progress, and comfort for strength. The people who achieve uncommon results aren't lucky. They're willing to give up what the 99% cling to. They trade nights out for nights grinding. They trade instant gratification for long-term purpose. And they do it over and over again. To build something great, you have to let go of average. That means sacrificing habits, mindsets, and even people who hold you back. It means walking away from comfort zones, outdated identities, and environments that no longer align with where you're going. Sometimes it means sacrificing time with people you care about so you can focus. It might mean less sleep, less fun, less freedom, at least temporarily. And that's the price most people are not willing to pay. They want change, but they don't want to change. They want growth, but they don't want to give anything up. You can't stay the same and expect different results. You can't hold on to every comfort and still reach new levels. There's a cost to progress, and you have to decide if you're willing to pay. The 1% don't see sacrifice as a punishment. They see it as the path. They understand that to build a different life, you have to live differently. You can't wake up late, waste time and scroll your way to success. You can't do what everyone else is doing and expect to get what only a few achieve. It takes intention, commitment, and the willingness to delay gratification. People talk about wanting success, but their actions show otherwise. They spend hours on things that bring zero value to their goal. They prioritize what feels good now over what will move them forward. They say they don't have time, but they're not willing to sacrifice comfort to create it. Sacrifice isn't just about big dramatic decisions. It's in the daily choice. Every day you're either making progress or making excuses, and every excuse is just a refusal to sacrifice something. The truth is, every next level of your life will demand a different version of you, a stronger, more focused, more disciplined version, and getting there requires giving up what no longer serves you. That could be bad habits, unproductive routines, even relationships that drain your energy. It might mean sacrificing your need to be liked, to be understood, to fit in, because leadership, greatness, and excellence are lonely paths at times. The higher you go, the more you'll be required to let go. Most people think they're stuck because of circumstances, but they're not stuck. They're attached to ease, to familiarity, to comfort. And until you're willing to sacrifice those attachments, you'll stay right where you are. You'll keep circling the same problems, stuck in the same patterns, watching others pass you by, not because they're better than you, but because they're willing to give up what you're not. You have to decide what matters more, your temporary comforts or your long-term vision, because you can't have both. Sacrifice is required, not once, not occasionally, but consistently. It's part of the process. It's the difference between wishing and achieving, between hoping and becoming. The 1% understand that. That's why they rise while the rest stay behind, wondering why things never change. Most people stop when things get hard. They stop when it's inconvenient, when progress is slow, when the excitement fades and reality sets. They start with energy, with dreams, with good intentions, but the moment they face resistance, they retreat. They convince themselves it's not the right time, that they're not ready, or that maybe it just wasn't meant to be, and so they quit. Not because they lack talent, but because they lack persistence. They give up too early, too easily, and too often. The 1%, however, keep going. They persist when it's boring, when it's painful, when it seems like nothing is working. They keep moving forward when motivation disappears, when support vanishes, and when doubt creeps in. They understand that the road to success is not smooth or straight. It's filled with setbacks, delays, frustrations, and failures, but they keep showing up. They persist not because it's easy, but because they've made a decision that they're not stopping until they get there. No matter how long it takes, no matter how many times they fall, no matter how many people don't believe in them. Persistence is what separates the successful from the spectators. It's not intelligence, luck, or even opportunity. It's the willingness to continue. Most people quit right before the breakthrough. They walk away just before the tide turns. They lose patience, and with it, they lose everything they could have become. The 1% understand that there's no such thing as overnight success. What looks like a sudden rise is always the result of relentless effort behind the scenes. Years of grinding, failing, learning and pushing, when it would have been easier to stop. There's a reason most people never reach their full potential. It's because they only act when it's easy. They work hard when things are going well, when they're getting results, when they feel supported. But as soon as it gets quiet, as soon as obstacles appear, they slow down. They look for something new, something easier, something that promises faster results. They jump from goal to goal, never sticking with anything long enough to master it. They don't give themselves a chance to succeed, because they don't stay in the game long enough to win. The 1% take a different path. They understand that persistence isn't glamorous. It doesn't always look exciting or feel rewarding. In fact, most of the time it's repetitive, lonely, and thankless.
But that's where greatness is built, in the moments no one sees, in the early mornings, the late nights, the silent struggles. Persistence is built in the discomfort. It's the daily decision to keep going, even when the results are invisible, even when you're tired, even when you feel like nothing is working. Quitting is easy. It gives instant relief. It removes pressure, fear, and discomfort. But it also removes progress. It removes growth. It removes the possibility of something greater. Every time you quit, you teach yourself that it's okay to abandon your goals. You build a habit of stopping, and that habit compounds, just like persistence does. Every time you persist, even in a small way, you build resilience, you build mental toughness, you build trust in yourself. You start to believe that you can handle more. You prove to yourself that you're not someone who quits when it gets hard. Most people want success, but they aren't willing to struggle for it. They want the outcome without the process. They want the reward without the resistance. But the 1% have accepted that struggle is part of the path. They embrace the challenge. They lean into the pain, because they know that on the other side of persistence is transformation, and that the only way to get to the other side is to keep going. No matter what, the 1% persist. That's why they make it. That's why they win. That's why they live lives the other 99%